Suffragette Movement. So as you all know, you can probably spot Victorian from a mile away now. So tight corset, the many layers, and by 1920, when women got the vote, I think I know which one I'd rather wear every day. So in 19th century America, the struggle for women's rights, including the right to vote, enshrined nearly 100 years ago in the 19th Amendment, often went hand in hand with other social and political goals, from abolishing slavery and securing Native American land rights to promoting temperance and championing, I lost my spot, the dress reform movement. Dress reformers proposed comfortable and healthful alternatives to confining garments such as corsets and crinolines, the cage-like steel underskirts that you won't know how to spot. Chafing against clothing norms was, of course, not quite the same thing as rebelling against the patriarchy, but the two issues frequently overlapped starting in the mid-1800s. So around, I think it was basically all of Victoria's reign that the suffragette movement really started to pick up speed. As you know the reasons why. Women demanded physical freedom along with other less tangible liberties, and many early feminists embraced what was euphemistically known as freedom dress, or in other words, pants. You can see what outfit I chose to wear today. But rather than spurring the suffrage movement forward, the garment prompted widespread backlash from a society that saw it as a sign of moral decay and a threat to male power. Who here has heard of the bloomer? And that, okay, all right. So it's basically Turkish fashion. So it was the big baggy pants. You'll see pictures. So it had the big baggy pants. It had the skirt. So even by today's standards, that's just shy of that. But it didn't start with Amelia Bloomer. It started with Elizabeth Smith Miller. So she was the daughter of wealthy abolitionists. So she was already kind of on the rebellious trail anyway. On an 1892 essay published in the Arena, she recalled an experience she had in 1851. While spending many hours at work in the garden, I became so thoroughly disgusted with the long skirt that the dissatisfaction suddenly ripened into the decision that this shackle should no longer be endured. Turkish trousers to the ankle with a skirt reaching some 4 inches below the knee were substituted for the heavy, untidy, exasperating old garment. How many of you have done gardening work? Gardening work? Yeah. Can you imagine doing this? Can you imagine doing this in this outfit? I couldn't imagine that. You might, but
yes, even in a corset.
Yeah. Shortly thereafter, Miller wore this unconventional costume on a visit to Seneca Falls, New York, where she stayed with her cousin Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Stanton and her friend and neighbor Amelia Bloomer, that's where the name came from, at once joined me in wearing a new costume. Bloomer, a temperance activist and abolitionist, had launched a newspaper for women, The Lily, following the first women's rights convention, which was held in 1848. When Bloomer published the editorial in praise of the new outfit in April of 1851, circulation soared and she was inundated with requests for patterns from around the country. Thus, the freedom dress got a new name, the Bloomer. So this is Amelia Bloomer. This is typically what most people think of when they hear, or think about the first type of pants from Victorian era. So this is actually, I believe this is the picture that they used in the Lily, but this is what she looked like older too. Okay, within weeks of its first appearance in the Lily, the Bloomer reportedly spread as far as California and Texas. The American suffragist Hannah Tracy Cutler introduced the Bloomer to Britain when she wore it at the World's Peace Congress in 1851. The Bloomer also conquered popular culture in the form of caricatures, songs, and plays praising and mocking it, and then usually misrepresenting its appearance. The term bloomerism came to be inevitably, if incorrectly, associated not just with wearing trousers, but also with other supposedly deviant for women behaviors, such as smoking, drinking, gambling, serving in the military, God forbid, and abandoning husbands and children. As Bloomer herself pointed out, wearing traditionally male garments suggested an across-the-board usurpation of the rights of man, notably the right to vote. And if you even look at the picture, at least in my mind, it's like, that's not a guy's outfit.
So manly.
Yeah. Women who dared to wear bloomers faced what the American suffragist Mary Livermore described as a daily crucifixion. When Stanton and Miller strolled through Seneca Falls in their bloomers, they were, quote, followed by a crowd of boys yelling, singing, and laughing while every door and window was lined with staring faces. Though Stanton later recalled that she had felt, quote, as joyous and free as some poor captive who was just cast off his ball and chain, her young sons didn't want to be seen with her. Her father banned the bloomer costume from his house. Her older sister actually wept. Stanton reported to Miller in a letter, adding that her husband Henry, a New York State senator, had discovered that some good Democrats said they would not vote for a man whose wife wore the bloomers. Stanton confessed to Henry in another letter that she feared the short dress, as bloomers were commonly referred to, would cost me the loss of my kin or family. After 2 years, she gave it up, resuming the uncomfortable, inconvenient, and many times dangerous garments of her sex, as she described them to her son Neil in the letter. Had I counted the cost of the short dress, I never would have put it on. Susan B. Anthony, I'm sure most of you have heard of Susan B. Anthony. Although Stanton had passed the most bitter experience in the short dress, Susan decided to give it a try. Anthony wore her bloomers around Albany. At the end of the day, she complained, I have been in the streets and printing offices all the day long, had rude, vulgar men stare me out of countenance, and heard them say as I opened the doors, there comes my bloomer, oh hated name. And there was one particular time with her where she was actually walking down the street and men and boys surrounded her and taunted her, and I don't think they actually beat her, but I believe police had carried out the action. As Stanton told Lucy Stone, another suffragist who had tried then given up the bloomer, we put the dress on for greater freedom, but what is physical freedom compared with mental bondage? By all means, have the new dress made long. Anthony agreed, though her experience in the bloomer had taught her a valuable lesson, that women can never compete successfully with men in the obvious industrial applications in long skirts. No one knows their bondage save for the few of us who have known the freedom of short skirts. The bloomer's demise was part of a larger fashion reckoning as dress reformers came to believe that their shocking sartorial experiments were unhelpful distractions from more pressing issues. In 1865, when the Civil War ended, the National Dress Reform Association actually disbanded amid concerns that negative attention on dress reform was holding back from other causes that were more important, so like voting and things like that. Going forward, American suffragists largely strove to conform to fashion rather than upend it, just because it was causing too much distraction from their actual message. So then they rebranded themselves as respectable women instead of radicals. So instead of inviting unflattering comparisons to men, suffragists now strove to look as feminine and thus as harmless as possible. So yeah, and this is where Chanel, Coco Chanel came in to play, because she got rid of the corset completely and said, just make it straight, make it comfortable. So how things have changed, just how we could wrap it up, how things have changed from 100 years ago. Women are able to vote and have a voice in the political arena. Women can work in almost any profession they wish to. We can wear pants. But real pants, not Turkish stuff if you want to, but we do not have to marry to secure our future. We have the right to divorce. Women didn't have a right to divorce in Victorian times. We can join the army. We have the same rights to education as our male counterparts. We do not have to relinquish our property to our husband when we get married. We can shop without an escort. We can compete in the Olympics. We can have our own passport before and after marriage. We can keep our own money. Women have the right to refuse to have sex with their husbands without the threat of divorce, beatings, or rape in most cases. We're able to sue for sexual harassment, and we're able to stand up for ourselves. So that's it. So, yeah, we've come a long way, but, you know, that's it.
Cool. Jordan, that was amazing. I mean, the contrast between this physical confinement of a corset, let's say, and the societal confinement that women were put under. I mean, the comparison you made is compelling and stirring and amazing. You did a fantastic job.
Thank you. I was just shocked as I kept finding more, and I'm like, this is so depressing. But it's so good to see how far we've all come and wear whatever we want.
Well, just one personal comment. In my lifetime, or when I'm in junior high at Wilson, okay, in the 1960s, early 1970s, girls weren't allowed to wear pants. You had to wear a skirt. I mean, it's, you know, every day. And it was a big deal if it was 25 below outside. The administration would make an announcement that girls could wear pants the next day. I mean, that's
under their skirt.
Under their skirts. Yeah, but that was a big deal. I mean, that's in you know, my lifetime. It's the last 50 years.
Yeah, yeah.
That's now that I think about it, oh my God, how ridiculous, how utterly absurd.
Yeah,
And I think your presentation does a marvelous job of frankly putting forth the absurdity of all of this.
Yeah, and I couldn't believe it when I put that waist thing together. I don't know where it ended up, but when it,
Oh, I have it back here.
that was the standard. It was just like, yeah, that was crazy. So,
Well,
but yeah, if you guys want more information, I have articles printed off from a couple of my main sources. So, and then
If you want to come look at how my dress
Yeah.
is put together, feel
Absolutely.
free. Absolutely.
feel free to play with it. And then if you want to totally geek out Victorian style, you can read this book. It's How to Be a Victorian by Ruth Goodman. It's a dawn to dusk guide about how to be a Victorian. Like one chapter just on what was involved in getting up in the morning. There was someone, specifically I believe in Towns, that was, I forget what his title was, but for, was it half a penny a day, half a penny a week, he would have a stick and he would come and whack on your window to wake you up. That's just one weird thing from Victorian times. So, yeah. So,
an interesting job description.
yeah. I whack people's windows. Yeah.
Town crier.
Yeah, the town crier, the window whacker.
Go up and down the street.
Yeah, exactly.
You take a day off and no one gets to work.
Yeah, and no, it covers everything from the time they wake up, how they got dressed, what they did for makeup, that was quite dangerous, how they did their hair, all the layers, she gets even more detailed than what I got. And then last chapter is what they did after dark. Back then. Now that was all seen. So if you want a copy, feel free to come up but other than that, that's all I have to say. So thank you for coming.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, any other
for-
questions first
yeah.
of all?
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
So the clothing you were showing today, is that in England and mostly America?
Yeah, I believe so, yes,
Okay.
because usually those mimicked each other quite a bit, because by then they were friends, England and the US are friends. So,
I think it differs in the sense that like towns, cities, yes, but when you get out into backwoods, out west,
Wild West, yeah,
where you didn't have access to this, you probably were the one who was doing everything, even if you were more of an upper class person, you were probably doing more, then it's gonna
yeah.
tone it down, you're not gonna have a thing for everything.
So
Yeah.
what class
That's a good
would
point.
this fashion be?
Most of the outer garments are the higher end,
Yeah.
but the undergarments that I specifically made, they're more, it's hard, because that was just the base layer for everybody. So it
would
depended, but that's one of the
fanciness,
core side.
like, you get fancier and then more
You can-
lace,
yeah.
more decorations,
Depends
goes up.
on how much lace you have on hand and how much you're willing to make. Yes.
So, like, what would wash day be like? Like, how much wash are you doing? And what are you wearing while you're doing the wash?
Right. George probably answered that.
Well,
better
yeah,
than
I mean, we've got a great exhibit here in the museum, if you get a chance, downstairs, that shows what wash day was like. I mean, you were getting the water off the roof here in this house, that was held in a cistern downstairs, because you were using literally, 40, 50 gallons at a time, boiling water on a stove, and then making your own detergent out of potash and salts of tartar and things like that, so all these corrosive chemicals. Once you did all of the boiling of the clothes, and that helped sterilize them, of course,
Yeah.
then you had to, you took them out and you wrung them out in a wringer washer. The wringer washer itself was, the wringer part was so horrible, they were called mangles, because that's what would happen to your fingers if
So
you were a
many kids
moment,
would stick
yeah,
their
kids,
fingers
moment
in.
of
Yeah.
inattention.
They
And
wouldn't
then-
get broken, they would get crushed.
Crushed, yes, it would peel the skin off your hand or peel the skin off your arm. And then, so that was basically one day, it's 10 hours on a
Yeah.
Monday.
Yeah.
Then on Tuesday, you're gonna hang everything out to dry. And then on Wednesday, you're gonna spend another 10 hours with irons that are heated on the stove.
Probably burn your clothes.
All the time.
Yeah.
And you would have one to go and one to show. You'd have one heating while you're using the other, and you'd swap them out all the time. And you would iron everything. I mean, your pillowcases, your handkerchiefs, everything, because that was also a way to sterilize the clothes. You might not realize it at the time because germ theory wasn't prevalent, but you were sterilizing the clothes by doing that,
Yeah.
and it kept you healthier.
So
It
that's-
was horribly laborious. And women in this household would not be doing their own laundry. You'd have a laundress who would come in
Yeah.
and do it piecemeal,
Right.
getting a day wage.
But
she
poor
wouldn't be a
women
part of
had to do everything.
But poor women had
Yeah.
to do everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
In addition to bearing children. addition to cooking, all of it, yeah, so.
And middle class women often, you know, you might have a laundress come in and help, but it was ridiculously laborious,
Yeah.
and someone had to do that. You know,
Yeah.
literally, 3 days out of every 7.
Yeah. So that's why they had all these undergarments, was to avoid having to wash and potentially damage the fancy stuff, so.
Yeah, cause like this is like polyester, but if you ever work with like silk or something like that, like, which I have done, you can use an iron on it, but
Pray
you
the whole
can't use a hot iron. Like
Yeah.
you can press something a little bit flat, but you can't really use a hot iron, but those irons, think of a cast iron pan.
Yeah.
Over your gas stove, now stick it on your fabric.
Precisely.
You guys,
yeah.
like most customers, use a lot of steam.
Yeah, I mean, today I did,
I
had a
don't.
steam, I had a steam iron, I have an actual closed one that I use, but today I just use my big steam iron.
I
It's
do
industrial,
use
so-
an iron, cause I generally work in wool and linen
Yeah.
only.
So she's gotta have a high heat.
So an iron is fine for me, it's not gonna ruin anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Yes.
So when you were talking about like how women were viewed in the era by men, was there like exceptions to that, to like wealthy or rich people, or even like royalty, where like women had authority in their household, or?
I didn't find that in my research.
I would say the only exception is
was
Queen
just-
Victoria.
Yeah.
Which
yeah.
makes
Yeah, but I don't
perfect,
think
she
she
did not
had, I think she still was,
The puppet.
after she was married, I think some of her,
Yeah.
I don't wanna say her, like suddenly it was okay to ask, well, the things that I watched of that show was, he was okay, like they would ask him permission for her,
Right.
Oh.
that kind of stuff. Not that it diminished her a little bit, but I mean, gave him power too.
Yeah, my understanding is when she was exercising her authority as queen, she's in charge.
Yeah.
But in
Yeah.
things like the household, she
He
deferred to
was,
him.
yeah.
and
Right.
He's in charge.
Yeah,
So they bifurcated, their lives.
but I mean, he didn't honestly live that long.
42. Okay, other questions?
Yeah. Anything else?
Well, please feel free to mix and mingle
Yeah.
afterwards. We can't really turn on the lights, so please be careful
Yeah,
of
this is
walking
really
around.
fun, yeah.
Before,
Vintage TV, we'll try to
before
avoid
we
that.
adjourn, would you please join me in thanking first Alex for the wonderful work you did. And then join me in thanking Jordan again. Really a fabulous